Now that we're online, I'm sorry. Happy birthday to my wife Marinella. Okay, I've done my part. Okay, I've done my duty. Okay. While it's not a significant part of the population, there's a circle of Math Olympiad enthusiasts in the country that has grown through the years in an ecosystem that's fostered by different organizations. I'm Richard Eden of the Math Department and also a member of the Mathematical Society of the Philippines. And we're the group organizing this contest called the Philippine Mathematical Olympiad next week, and we facilitate the participation of the country in the International Math Olympiad. The president of the MSP, Ernie Lope, was also IMO leader and previous contestant. And as I was walking up earlier, I saw some people involved in other organizations that I was talking about in this ecosystem of Math Olympiad competitions. Renard Chua of MTG. We have some other people from MTG and I think AMSLI. They facilitate and train students in joining other contests. And then some of these students eventually find their way to the Philippine Math Olympiad and the IMO. Now, it's been a difficult ride for the country getting to where we are, but we're definitely doing much better in the IMO compared to many, many years ago. But as with as any Math Olympiad enthusiast would agree with, there's always room to grow. So we're happy to have with us today Po-Shen Loh to hear his thoughts on joining, running, and training for mathematical Olympiads, what his philosophy is, based on his experiences with the training of the U.S. team. And I think he has this particular philosophy of collaboration. In fact, their MOP has opened its doors to invited participants outside the US in previous years. And so, just like the second session, we're going to have an organic conversation about Math Olympiads. So, prepare your questions. Let there not be too much of a gap between his go signal and the first question. And if possible, line up to the microphone. So, Po-Shen Loh, thank you again. And okay, take it away.
Hello again. Okay, well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I guess these are about Math Olympiads now. Well, Math Olympiads are how I first got a really, really powerfully positive impression of the students from the Philippines. You see, I'm the national coach of the USA International Math Olympiad team. And that job is not as much fun as a different job at the International Math Olympiad. I'm the team leader, which is the national coach. A more fun job is the deputy team leader. The deputy team leader is the assistant coach. What makes that more fun is that you spend the entire time at the International Math Olympiad with the students. You know, you often think of the coach as somebody who's coaching with the students, but believe it or not, when you go to the International Math Olympiad, the official coaches are sequestered off to not be able to talk to the students for a while. That's because we're deciding the questions and translating them into various languages. For me, it's a bit easier to do the translation part because it's just English in the first place. But actually, that's not quite true. That puts me on the English language committee at the International Math Olympiad, which is the hardest part, which is when we translate the English that the question was written in into the English that it should be officially. Anyway, but the point is, I'm just trying to explain the more fun job is the deputy team leader. I was that for a couple of years. And when I was the deputy team leader for the United States, that meant that I spent the most of the Olympiad hanging around with students from all countries, not only US. And so that's where I got to know some students from Philippines. For example, I got to know someone named Carmela Lau. That was in the early days when I was a deputy leader. I was really impressed. She's amazing. Actually, she's in Manila right now. Happens to be. If anyone knows, she happens to be in Manila right now. She's busy today, so she couldn't come to this event. But the last time I saw her was in New York City earlier this year, and it was around that made me think. You know, maybe I should stop by Philippines on the way around the world as I do my travels in the winter of this year. So that's why I'm here. Well, I should tell you a little bit about the story maybe of how I got here also, because that helps to put all of us on the same page. I understand there's probably a lot of people here who like Olympiads. Maybe you try to do the contest, maybe you look at the problems, maybe you're curious about the Olympiads. So for me, the Olympiads were what got me really interested in math in the first place. You see, when I was growing up, when I was a kid in elementary school, I learned math mostly from my mom. And the story is because I was growing up in the United States. Our family had moved to the United States. Well, my parents had moved to the United States. I was born in the United States, but they came from Singapore. And the way that it works when you move to the United States for a job is that, well, when you move to the United States and have a job, is that if you lose your job, you go back to your home country. And so my parents were always a bit concerned to try to make sure that whatever math level I had, it would be at a good level compared to Singapore. So they always went and got the math textbooks that the rest of the people were using in Singapore, and they would bring them back, and I would do those in addition to what the regular math curriculum was in the US. In some sense, I was doing Singapore math before it was cool. Is there something called Singapore math that you guys hear about? Do you guys know about this? Yeah. So I was doing it only because my parents were from Singapore, and that would be the default country they go back to. And my parents told me the reason you need to do this is because in Singapore back then, in the 1980s, at the end of every year or before every school year, they would rank everybody. And you know what they used the ranking for? I don't know if you guys ever did this, but the ranking was used to make the class decisions. Do you still do that here? Not really. Not really. It used to be. It used to be in Singapore. I don't know if they even do that anymore. But my parents told me the reason it's so important to make sure you're at the level is so that you don't end up going back to Singapore and being the bottom of the entire school. That's why they said it's important to do this stuff. So I was learning math from my mom when I was in elementary school. But actually, at that time, the kind of math we were doing was a lot more of the practice kind. When I was growing up, maybe up until about 4th grade, I did a lot of practice type math. There were a lot of calculations to make sure you have a good foundation. And that's what I thought math was. It was okay, I could do it, but I wouldn't say I loved it. If you asked me, what subject do you like the best? My answer at that age was math, because I can do it. I want to be very clear. It was not math because it's beautiful, it's not math because it's so interesting, it was math because I'm good at it. Okay, that was my answer. But then when I got to 5th grade, around that time, my father found a book of hard math puzzles. And my father, by the way, so my mother was a math teacher in Singapore before. That was her background. That's why she could do it this way. My father is a statistics professor. So he thinks about research and statistics. And what he told us was, he said, it's good to think about questions that you have to think about for a while. I got really lucky that at grade 5, there was already somebody telling me, it's good to think about a question for more than 1 minute. And he found a book of puzzles, brain teasers. And every single night, we would do one of them. We, meaning myself and my younger brother. My younger brother was 2.5 years younger than me and approximately as intelligent at the exact same time. That was in part because my younger brother looked at me and he was like, well, come on, if that guy can do it, so can I, right? So that's how my life was. My brother was usually approximately, 3 months behind me in terms of capability. Well, anyway, but at the same time, he was 2.5 years younger. So that made that he was approximately 2 years, 3 months ahead, if that makes sense. Can I do that kind of arithmetic? I'm not sure. Maybe. Anyway, so that was my background. We did these hard math problems, and the point was to think about the same problem for like half an hour, which for many people in elementary school you don't do. That was a big impact. And I'm saying this because we have been thinking earlier about education and what kinds of things we can do. I do think it's very healthy to give young people something to think about and chew on for a while. Well, then I got to middle school. Middle school is when I found these math contest problems. And I got really interested because suddenly there were questions that even my mom had to think about. Remember, that was the smartest person who was teaching me math, right? And so the thought was, oh, wait, there's hard questions out here. That's interesting. Also, I'm the kind of person who likes to do things my own way. So then that was fun. I get to think about the questions. And that's how I attribute myself doing math today, is because there existed math competitions. My father put us on this track, and then I found this whole systematic road of math competitions, and I went through. But the year I made the US International Math Olympiad team, that was an accident. I shouldn't have been on that team. Okay, so that was an accident. I somehow did very well on that one test, got on the team, and it was the second worst performance in the history of the United States. Like, our team, in part because I was on it. This is true. And it was actually so bad that the year after that, the US changed the selection protocol. That's how you know you screwed up, right? So, because it used to be that there's this one test called the USA Math Olympiad exam, 6 questions. Do as well as you can. And then that one test determined the team. And after the team got picked that year and the result came out, the officials realized that you cannot base it on one test because some people might just get lucky on that one test. So they now have many tests. Yeah, so that's how we do it now. Now there's always many tests. And after that experience, I remember thinking, I think I should leave this world of math Olympiads. Because there are better people, way, way, way better people, and I'll go do something else. So I went off and I did something else. Actually, the year I went to the International Math Olympiad was after my 11th grade year. There are 12 years in the US. So I actually did not even play the 12th grade year. I was like, let's let other people do this. And then I went on and I did some other stuff instead. I thought I would do research. So I went to do research. But then there was a thing that happened. This is how random history is, okay? So there's something that happened in the middle, which is that in the year 2001, I was a college student. So year 1999 is when I went to the International Math Olympiad. Year 2000, I went to college. Year 2001, the United States of America hosted the International Math Olympiad. And they needed people to help as tour guides. I said, I know how to do that. So I volunteered, I signed up to be a tour guide. It was fun. I got to go back to the International Math Olympiad. And to this day, I maintain that the most fun job at the International Math Olympiad is the tour guide. If you ever go to the International Math Olympiad, you will find out that the tour guide is somebody who takes the teams around, and then after they tell everyone to go to sleep, then they go and have a party. It's wonderful. And they're all about the same age, and it's great. Anyway, so that was what I did. But then because the US hosted the International Math Olympiad, more fun fact, when you host the entire contest, the host has to find approximately $1 million to run the operation because you are the host. I mean, it's actually a bargain. I understand that when you host the World Cup, it costs more than $1 million to organize. But anyway, it was like $1 million or something. And whenever you organize something that has that kind of a budget, you make sure that when you fundraise, your error that you make is you err on having a bit too much, not a bit too little. If you're raising $1 million and you fall short by 10%, that's bad. That's a lot of money. That's like more money than we usually spend every year training the team, if that makes sense. So they erred on the over. Oh my gosh, suddenly they had extra money. So the next year, they decided to mega-size the National Math Olympiad training camp. Mega-size meaning it used to always be 30 people. Every year, the top 30 people studying for math went to the training camp. Then some year, they got an extra bunch of money to spend. It blew up to 180 people. And then they suddenly needed trainers. If you imagine what happens when you 6x your number of students overnight, you sort of need 6x the number of trainers. They even asked me if I wanted to do it. I thought, surely you can find better people, right? Like, I was not one of your top students. But in the end, I said, okay, why not? Let me try. Do you still need someone? I think I was either the last or the second last or one of the almost last people to go in and join the program as a trainer. And then I got voted best teacher. So then I thought, what is this? So I mean, at the end of the camp. So then I thought, maybe it is useful that I can't solve every problem instantly. Who knows? Or maybe I like explaining things. By the way, that's what I always liked. I actually don't, I don't do a thing just to solve the problem and crash it and bash it. You understand what I mean? Some of you know what I mean. Like sometimes there's just do the ugly, solve the problem. No. I didn't care about that. I was the weird guy. Whenever I was in the math training camp as a student, I wasn't trying to maximize my score. We did the practice exams. Sometimes you want the high, these are practice. They don't count for anything anyway. But people usually would try to get as many points as they could. My goal on every practice exam was to solve a question in the weirdest possible way so that over dinner we could chat about it. I'm actually serious. This is what I did. I always like to do things differently. Any of you who saw any of my talks earlier today, you will see that that streak is what powers everything that I do. I do things differently because I find it fun. And I'm not after just, let's get a prize for the sake of the prize. Let's do something interesting. Let's do something different. And so okay, then that's how I went back into the whole ecosystem. And eventually I became the person who coaches the team. So I wanted to tell you that part of the story because sometimes people assume that everything is all linear, that you were the best person when you were in your year, so then you go forward. No, this is how the world works. You kind of go around and everyone has different things they can contribute. Now let's talk a little bit about approaches to coaching, right? So when I became the national coach of the US team, I actually told the people in charge who were interviewing me, this is called the Mathematical Association of America. I warned them, if you put me in charge of the US team, we are going to do worse. Because I'm not going to set doing well on the Math Olympiad as the prime objective. The primary objective, I said, is we have all these people who have gotten picked in from around the US based on the contest. They are actually really extraordinary people because they did well on something. They did well on some test. And if we have that kind of person in front of us, I want to maximize not their score this year, but I want to maximize the chance that I'm going to read about them in the New York Times for something over the next 20 years or so, or 20 years later or so. I said, that's what I care about. By the way, I did that because I was also one of those students before. And I wanted to do something that would help the student, if that makes sense. To me, if there's ever somebody in my sphere, I want that what I'm doing with them is helping them, not just advancing maybe, how we're doing on one particular prestige. So, and I can see, by the way, this is a common thread of many coaches. Many coaches, you care about the people. We coach because of the people. And what we get, right? I think that's nice. And so I wanted to make sure that the way we ran US was this way. Fortunately, the Mathematical Association of America was okay with this. And they said, okay, we'll still pick you. Then we accidentally won 4 times. I want to emphasize that accidentally won. I'll also tell you what was involved in winning. It was not because I taught them things, okay? So there are things that people taught themselves. I'll be giving you ways that you can teach yourself too. But let me say a little bit more about this. Let's add more color to this thing too, which is about, with the US team winning. Here I'm going to now start flipping back and forth through a bunch of different slide decks because there are different things that have parts I want to show. The first is, in the year 2015, the US team placed number 1. That was a surprise. What's even more interesting is where they came from. The US, there are cities, big cities with very strong scientific and mathematical cultures, like Boston. Do you know what's there? Harvard, MIT. Like San Francisco. You know what's there? Silicon Valley, Stanford, right? You even have places like Washington, D.C. There are some of the top high schools in the entire United States in that area. One is called Thomas Jefferson High School of Science and Technology. One's called Montgomery Blair High School. And you might expect that you'd see the team come from there. But here is where they came from. This was the year 2015, number 1 in the world. This is where they came from. So it's kind of small, but over here, this says South Carolina. Do you know where that is? It's south of North Carolina. It's over there, all right? That's not San Francisco. There are some dots over here too. That thing on the west, that's not California yet. That thing on the west, that's in the state called Kansas. Kansas. There's something over there. This thing is around Missouri. That's a city called St. Louis. Okay? There's New York. You see, there's the New York State. But the thing at the top of the New York, that is not where New York City is. That city is called Rochester. There is a very good university there, by the way. But if you can get what my point is at this stage, it is not the usual suspects, if that makes sense. This is actually very interesting, that the talent, I don't like the word talent, but the skill, this extreme skill that's popping up, it's not all coming from these super advanced schools that are training. There's two more over there. That's around New York City. So you can see there's two which are around New York City. One is outside of New York towards the Connecticut side. The other is outside of New York towards the New Jersey side. But to be honest, both of them are in the New York City metropolitan area. So both of those are quite strong. One of them did go to a special school. It's called Bergen County Academies. It's got people who teach at the high school there who previously had gone to the Math Olympiad camps. So that's unusual. That is one place that there was one of those schools. The person in Connecticut, though, his school wasn't one of those that had tons of people there. All right. Why? This is interesting, right? Isn't there, I mean, when you think of the US, you would think that the people who end up being the best in the country come from these enormous training factories where there must be some teacher right next to them who's always giving them something. I can guarantee you that there's people here, based on that map, where that is not the case. And that's what makes it so interesting. That's why I'm trying to share these ideas with you. That means that people are learning things remotely. Now, we were talking yesterday about the value of a community. The community is extremely valuable. The way we run things is that every summer we do get together for a camp. The main value of the camp is to make friends, in my opinion. You learn some math too, but a lot of the math that's being taught is actually people learning online. But then when we make the community, as people become friends, they keep talking to each other on the internet afterwards. That is what was going on here. In fact, yeah, like a bunch of those are we're really good friends. A bunch of those dots, like the guy in Kansas, the guy in St. Louis, the guy, one of the guys, well, they all were friends. They all were close friends. But like there were a bunch of pairs of these people or triplets of these people who were constantly talking to each other about math while they were in high school from the different cities every day or something. Maybe not every day, but very frequently. Actually, maybe every day. Very frequently chatting with each other. There was somebody who asked earlier in one of the Q&A sessions about whether it's in a competitive environment. I think it was an online person who asked. Somebody online had asked about if there's a competitive environment, what should you do? Work together? Well, what I'm showing you here is that the ones who worked together are the ones who flew all the way to the top because they kept exchanging problems with each other. But that's the ecosystem. I'm going to say something else here. One thing that I've noticed, and I've talked about some of the other top US students about this before, I've actually noticed that there's actually an explanation for why sometimes some of the most extraordinarily skilled people come from places where they do not have schools which are giving tons and tons of homework, because they go to schools where they don't have tons and tons of homework. Actually, when I went to high school, I was done with my homework on average every day by about 4 o'clock p.m. every day. That means that I can spend the rest of the day doing some very hard things of my own choice. But some people, unfortunately, they have homework that they have to do all the way up until 10 or 11 p.m. and then you just have to go to sleep. You wake up the next morning and they continue. So this is a certain thing I wanted to share, because if you're working in the education ecosystem, if you're a teacher, it can be interesting to think, what can you do with the students who are more advanced? What I always do with students more advanced is to give them less mandatory homework and more hard challenge pointers. So go think about this. And somehow, some of the people who are really motivated will actually fill all of their time doing the hard things. So you don't need to feel like you must make them busy, because they will make themselves busy. The people you need to make busy are the ones who will say they don't work if you don't give them work. But this is an important thing to think about. Actually, when I teach my classes in university, I only give hard problems. I don't give the routine ones. On the purpose. The purpose is to help make it so if you're going to work on my homework, you're going to develop something harder. Okay. So that I just wanted to share this piece because it's an encouragement to anybody who might live in a place which is not San Francisco, like all these people. You can still do it, right? And the question becomes how? How? Well, I will say, I know nowadays a lot of people, if I want to advertise one thing, this is not run by me, but if I want to advertise one thing, there is one guy in the world who seems to be really, not seems to be, who is really, really into coaching people. And that guy is a guy named Evan Chen. There's a program he runs. It's called Otis, O-T-I-S. It is the only program that I pay for my own kids to attend. I have, by the way, my oldest is a daughter. She's 16 years old. She's 11th grade. And she also does all these math contests. The only program that I pay for or subscribe to censor to is that one, because the guy who runs it, he's not a businessman. He just wants to help people. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this program. Also, by the way, he has a heart, and there's like the amount it costs. I believe he's quite flexible depending on where you come from. I believe that is the case. So I will say that's the program. His name is Evan Chen. Apart from that, though, there are other things people use. For example, these days, a lot of people learn geometry from a book also written by the same guy, this Evan Chen. Okay, there's a book. It's a geometry book. Maybe I should just pop that up here. Because people often ask if you want to go and do Olympiads. And don't worry, we won't only talk about training for Olympiads. We'll do some other stuff too. But Evan Chen, that's the guy. Oh yes, first link. So that's Evan Chen. Where are we? Books. Oh yeah, this is the teaching thing. Olympiad training for individual study. I will say, I think that's good. Oh yeah, if you like to watch on YouTube or Twitch, you can watch the guy live solving Math Olympiad problems. I'm serious. I don't know how much audio there is anyway, so don't worry. But this is just him sitting there thinking about Olympiad problems for 1 hour, 17 minutes and solving them in front of you. Anyway, very, very interesting guy. I will say something, I'll say that. And publications, right? So that's this Euclidean geometry in math Olympiads. That is, if you are trying to learn Olympiad geometry, that seems to be where people are going nowadays. But I want to tell a fun fact about that book. Let me make it bigger. Let me make a fun comment about that book. First of all, I want to ask one question. How many people here are like training for or trying out for Olympiads? Can I see? Okay, so it's actually not everyone. Oh well, in that case, maybe this advice of what to study I shouldn't be putting so much on. I guess I didn't exactly know what the audience is here, so I won't go too much further into like what to do to prepare, and instead I'll talk about more of the context, okay? But I will make one more comment about this. This book is the one which a lot of the people who do geometry at Olympiads now have looked at this thing. And the fun fact is he wrote this when he was in high school. He wrote it when he was in high school. It's a pretty extensive book. It has 300 problems, 200. Yeah, he served as a high school clerk. He wrote it while he was in high school. On page, 300 pages-ish. So, anyway. So it's a serious book. But the interesting comment is the guy wrote it when he was in high school. That means that he actually was fresh, like really thinking about these Olympiad problems at that time. All right, so I'll put these things here. Now that I also understand the audience is not all trying to go and practice for Olympiads, let me go and switch back to other things of what you can do and things about philosophy. So maybe the other piece I'll hit here. Let me just go over to this piece right here. I just wanted to show this thing right over here. And this is going to close the part where I just do the talking, and I want to switch to something which is more interactive again, like free-form and interactive, because I clearly misjudged the audience on the first part. I thought maybe this was a bunch of people trying to prepare for Olympiads. And so that way, when I switch, I'll switch to whatever you guys are actually interested in, and I'll just start going off for like segments talking about what you're interested in. But I want to close by saying something about, what was the outcome of saying, let's go and focus on actually getting more long-term success instead of short-term success. So this was the 2015 International Math Olympiad team, the 6 people who had who placed the first in the world. I was preparing a talk earlier last year, at the end of last year, just to tell parents about not cramming for contests and instead thinking about bigger goals. And so it caused me to look up to find out, what are these 6 people up to today? By the way, what I had been trying to do is I'd been trying to tell them about research. I'd been trying to tell them about thinking about longer problems. Back in that time, I also even sometimes put research problems or problems from research on the competition, on the selection competitions. So people were thinking about the idea that you could use math to do more later, actually, in math. So I started looking up to find out what these people were doing now. What I found out is that out of the 6 people, well, they did place first, but out of the 6 people, so this is not the part I'm proud of. The part I'm proud of is of the 6 people, 2 of them have made research breakthroughs already. So one of them, by the way, I mentioned this thing called Quanta Magazine in an earlier talk. Quanta Magazine profiles a lot of the latest breakthroughs in math. And so if you get your math result put up in Quanta Magazine, usually that means it's pretty serious. It's to the level that they're telling all the mathematicians of the world this was a significant advance. And so there's a famous problem called the sunflower conjecture, which actually had been open for 60 years. It's still open for 60 years. And one of the people who was on that 6-person team is a co-author on an advance on this major problem. The headline says, a major advance towards solving the 60-year-old sunflower conjecture is now is the thing that person worked on. But it's not only one. There's 2 of them. 2 of them. 2 of the people on that 6-person team have actually made research breakthroughs that hit the level of quanta. The second one was a guy who made, it says, absurdly fast algorithm for network flow. If any of you are in college teaching about algorithms, there's a network flow algorithm, which is about how much flow can you pump through a network of pipes. How much can you squeeze through at any given what's the total capacity? And there are algorithms to go and figure out what this can be. And they came up with something that was essentially linear time, which is basically as fast as reading the entire input. And this was also major. This was a major advance. So 2 out of the 6 have this. And that, to me, is very interesting. And I guess I should also say that, to me, is what makes me happy. It's that, yes, they placed first in the world in 2015, but to have 2 out of the 6 profiled in Quanta Magazine for separate accomplishments, now that's going towards in 20 years, do you read about it somewhere? So I guess I'll stop this part of the talk at that, where the concept was just, what should we be doing when we're thinking about math training, about math Olympiads, and what's the philosophy? Of course, we want to help people gain skills. I'm just going to leave this here as the top. Of course, we want to help people gain skills, but I think it's also really important to think what those people can do as they move forward and contribute more into the rest of the society or rest of the research world. With that, I want to flip into something that's more freeform, just so that I can make sure I'm catching the audience where they are. Anyone have any questions or directions you want me to go in? Because I'm capable of taking a direction and just going that way for like 15 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hello. Ayun.
Yes.
I'll be starting with a question from online. Even though earlier the crowd did not raise their hands on Olympiad, joining Olympiads, the online people also want to ask, what action plan can you give to students and or teachers who are interested in developing their math skills and probably even changing their mindset to reach an Olympiad level mathematics?
Yep. This is something I was talking about last night with somebody else who was working on trying to build up this Olympiad level capacity in countries all around the world. And I think that comes from building a culture of working on problems where you have to think about how to solve them, and the solutions do not follow standard textbook methods. So there are questions in the world where you look at them and you say, oh yes, you just plug it into that formula, or you just use this concept that you learned in school. That's one way of doing math problems. Then there's another whole pile of math problems, like the ones you make for Philippine Math Olympiad, where you have to be pretty creative. So it's about building a culture for people to do those kinds of questions. If you want a whole pile of questions that have already been made, there are and also in English, there are the American math competition problems. They're called the AMCs. And these are questions which, for people who are just starting out, are actually quite useful. There is something called the AMC 10, AMC 12. And these are questions where they can be understood by a high school student, but then they require a lot of creativity. They come up with a way to think of how to solve them. I'll also give you a practical tip. If you're trying to apply to US universities to study, it can be useful to get an AMC 10 or an AMC 12 score, because these are giving you a way of showing on an international standard how you do on a question where the question is weird. These are AMC 10, AMC 12. Unfortunately, the test date already passed this cycle. The test date is in November every year. However, if this is something interesting to you, be aware that next year in November, there will be another test date. I was at Philippine Science High School yesterday, and I was walking through the hallway, through the stairwell, and I saw a sign, and it was talking about the SAT. It was saying, SAT, this is how you get into US universities. I'll give you a tip. The SAT is useful for getting into US universities. It is. But if you also want financial aid, because of how expensive the US universities are, you should usually aim significantly higher than the SAT. I'm just going to give that advice. It's just because the way the US works, they give scholarships. Universities will give scholarships. But when they give scholarships, they can give scholarships to anyone in the entire world. The way the US universities typically work is that typically the person pays for the education, and they need to get the money from somewhere. So most of the people are paying. And then they have some extra money they can use to give to scholarships. But then if they want to pick scholarships, they need to pick people who somehow seem to stand out. And unfortunately, even if you get a perfect SAT math score, that's not enough to help you stand out. So I'm just going to give that practical advice, that these AMCs are also useful from that perspective. But in general, it's useful to think about these kinds of questions that people haven't seen before. Also, it doesn't have to be that you only do AMCs. If you participate in Philippine Math Olympiads and you have some results, these are actually usually what help a US university make a decision about whether or not to give a scholarship. So I'm saying this on purpose in this very pragmatic way, because sometimes people will also say, all right, but I'm busy enough. Like, is this something that's worth for my while to do? And what I would say is, understanding that is a ticket to many things, not only being able to do Math Olympiads, not only being able to think, but also a ticket to possibly being able to study abroad, US or other countries. Then it's useful to build this culture where you work on those questions. The good news is, at least our AMCs, those are all online for free. Are your old Philippine math, do you have a first round of Philippine math competition questions, which are also like easier, not writing a proof? Yes, good. Are your questions also online and downloadable for free? Good, yes. What's that? Perfect. Then in that case, you can just do those two, right? And that's directly where you are. I was only saying the AMCs because those are the only ones I know. But the point is, you should just work on those questions, and that happens to be on your pipeline as well, right? So bottom line is, spend time working on those questions, and do it even if you're a regular student in high school. It's healthy to go and challenge yourself with questions that are outside of the textbook. Other questions? Oh, yes.
Actually, not for me. I'll go on a limb here, because he asked people earlier if they're joining Math Olympiads. Might be a nuance of language. Is there anybody here who's preparing for math contests?
Oh, this is much better. Okay. Then I understand. Thank you so much for explaining. Oh, okay. Yes, because at first I saw so few and I thought maybe I'm giving wrong crowd. But yes, so if it's a spectrum. Yep. Got it. Actually, that's also true in the US. In the US, if you say Olympiads, some people think only if you're like really already at the end, right? But actually, math contest is all relevant, and this sort of advises what to do for the math contest. Excellent. So then work on these math contest problems. Actually, when I was in high school, I would make sure that every week, like on the weekend, I would go and spend about 3 hours on a Saturday just thinking about the math contest problems, trying to figure them out for myself. And I didn't look for a coach to tell me how to do it, by the way. I looked at the problems because I wanted to do it. Like, I wanted to find my way of doing it. I'm actually really weird in the sense that if I can't solve something, I actually don't want you to tell me how to do it. I don't. I want to figure it out. At most, I want you to give me a hint, but then I want to figure it out. I think you should do that. Because if somebody else tells you how to do it, it will come in and it will go out. You need to fight with it. Okay, any more questions? I mean, at this point, we're just going to go with questions, if that's okay with people. Yeah, just please go up to the microphone.
Good afternoon, sir. I actually have several questions. First of all, I'm a teacher in sixth grade, and I actually train students for competitions as well. No? So my first question is: there are two types of competitions that I've encountered. One is like the questions are pretty routine, but they have to do it in a very short amount of time. So it's essentially a contest of speed and accuracy. And then there are the questions, the competitions, that are like the Olympiad, wherein the problems are not routine. The problems can be anything under the sun, and you need to develop a special type of thinking to be able to answer them. So my first question is: in your training sessions, do you actually devote some time to developing speed and accuracy, or is it just straight to the non-routine, developing a certain way of thinking type of questions? No? Um, right? And then, is there a better methodology for conducting training sessions rather than just give the problem set, just give a sample problem, and let them solve it, let them share their solutions. If they can't, then walk them through, or give them some lead them in the right direction. Okay, but that's it. No, but is there something else? Is there another a better methodology for conducting those training sessions, right? And my third question was: how do you train students who you can feel have a lot more potential than you're currently tapping, or students who you feel are better than you at that stage? How do you give more than what you have, right? Right. And then my final question is, sorry, if as a coach, I also get stuck sometimes at some of the more difficult problems. So how do you avoid getting stuck, right, and losing face in front of the students?
Yeah, these are great questions. Okay, the first one is, do we spend time practicing speed and accuracy? Everyone has different styles. My style is no. Because I've always felt that if you do enough problems, you'll get fast enough naturally, you'll be accurate enough actually. And so, let's just think instead. In fact, when I lead sessions, we remove the time limit. And we just say, let's think about these questions, okay? And if we take longer, we take longer. But I want to discuss how we think about them. At the same time, students themselves, they will get faster. And if anyone ever wants to get faster at anything, I just tell them, learn how to just get faster. I'm not talking about faster at math competitions. I mean like to be faster at whatever you're doing right now. You can bring your brain into this higher state of awareness, which is actually nothing to do with the math contest. It's just like you're more able. This is actually an evolved human ability. It's how we escaped from bears and tigers. I mean, it exists. It exists. I'm just going to say I've never had it happen before, but I assume that if a tiger is chasing you, you run faster. Faster probably than you ever imagined you were capable of running before. The only problem is the tiger is still faster, so that's not good. But can tigers climb trees? Can tigers climb trees? Oh no, then you're just dead. How do you escape tiger? You can't. Huh? Fire! Oh, that's the only way. Okay, now I've learned a lesson. Now I need to make sure I don't run into a tiger. Okay. What did you say? Mowgli! Oh, yes. Hopefully it's true. All right. Well, in any case, what I'm trying to explain is there is a way to get faster. I actually use that every day for different things I do. Because I personally am always pressed for time for this, that, or the other thing, and just learning how you can push yourself into that thing, well, that doesn't need that you do it in the math class. That's a skill, and it's really good to get that skill. That skill comes from understanding how you know whether you're going too fast and you're losing control, if that makes sense. I have a sense of whenever I'm doing something, am I able to increase the throughput? Well, at some point you increase so much that you lose control, and there's like weird things that start to happen, like inaccuracies or whatever, right? So that's that. The other thing is you can learn to be more accurate, just in general. Just be careful. Be a careful person. There's a notion, being a careful person. So I say those two things you can get separately. All right. The next one. What were the questions? What's the next one? Yeah, just quickly. What was the next one? Ah, yeah. Better methodology than just saying, here are some problems. Think about them. Let's discuss together. First of all, that's a pretty good methodology already. It's pretty good because what you just said is, you guys think about it, and then we discuss. It's a very important piece. You guys think about it. There are variations on that strategy. What I do sometimes is, if the audience is all approximately the same level, sometimes to spice it up, I'll lead a game show style discussion of, hey, here's a question. Now you tell me any ideas you have, and I fill the entire board with your ideas. If somebody says, I want to use the fact that most prime numbers, almost all of them are bigger than 2, I'll say, idea number 1, almost all prime numbers bigger than 2. And we'll fill the entire board with the brainstorming, and we brainstorm together. That's a spin you can put on it. It only works if the audience is approximately the same level. Okay, but otherwise you're pretty good. What was the third question? Oh, yeah, how do you give more than what you have? Meaning, suppose your students know more than you do. How do you give them more than you have? How do you tap their potential so that they keep going anyway? Well, first of all, that's all the students I teach, right? They have more than I have. I already told you I was not supposed to be on the IMO team that year. So my students are actually always better than me. Always. Actually, if they're not, we have a problem. That's actually how I know. If I can ever do more problems than our students, we are in trouble that year. So, but in any case, how to do this? I think the important thing is for them to see you as a resource where you're going to help guide them. I mean, I'm up front. I tell everyone, I know what I'm at. I know what I can do. My goal is to help you guys be better than me, but I also know something about what resources I can suggest for you. I know how to help you emotionally, right? I also know how to help guide you on how you might be able to use all these skills someday, so hopefully you don't give up and you want to keep doing this. I see myself as a cheerleader. Right? And I need to be making sure I help everyone push to everything they can do so they can go to the interesting things that are after. Okay? And I just wanted to emphasize, when you work with these students, it is scary because your fourth question is, how do you lose face how do you deal with not losing face when you don't know the answer to what they're asking or they know more than you? Well, if you were upfront with it in the first place, right? That's normal, right? They're supposed to be among the best. And so, okay, we don't know, but that's okay. Then I get curious. If there's something I can't do, everyone sees, I don't get flustered. I get curious, and I say, I haven't seen that before. Can you show me? And I don't try to be like, okay, I get it. I actually go like, okay, can you show me slowly? Because, by the way, sometimes they're wrong. Right? Sometimes they think they know more, and they're actually wrong. But that's okay. Sometimes they're right. Regardless, I just want to see it slowly. Or if we can't find it, let's go and Google it together. Let's go and figure it out together. And I've learned so much that way. Whenever I teach, I've learned so much from other people that way. I think the point is this. If you're teaching totally normal students, totally normal stuff, and they know more than you, that is indeed quite possibly a problem. If you're teaching people who are extraordinary and they know more than you, that's not a problem. That's like what I said earlier in another talk, of if I do a problem, and the problem is supposed to be an easy one, and I can't do it, I feel bad. If the problem is supposed to be a hard one and I can't do it, I say it was a hard one. And it's okay. Yeah. Other questions? I guess another thing about this is like, it's easier to deal with the face and the relationship with the students if they see you as a friend as opposed to as the one who's going to tell them what to do. Right? If they see you as the friend who's actually genuinely trying to help them succeed, they're not going to make fun of you for that. Yeah. Okay, do we want to flip to online, offline? Is that what we're doing? Yes, online. Thank you. And then we'll get back to you. Yeah, then we'll get to you.
From an online asker, what fields or industries did your students from Olympiads get into after joining these math contests? What were their experiences in those fields or industries?
This is a very interesting question because it depends on the decade. So I don't know too much about the people older than me, other than the ones who are outliers, who are still doing things that you notice. But from the people about 1 or 2 decades older than me, or in the previous decade, the kinds of things that you see people going into and rising up in are, you saw some people who went into academia, and they did quite well as professors in math or business or something else. That's one side. You also saw some people who went into software, and they were involved in early stages in software companies, like Have you ever noticed that on Google, if you type in 36 plus 2 and hit enter, it gives you the answer? Has anyone ever noticed this? Yeah, that was written, I think that's the one that was originated from a person who was on US Math Olympiad team. He was early, of course, that's a very easy feature to write, okay? But the fact that that is there is because he was there. The much harder thing that he was involved with is, have you noticed that on Google, if you spell it wrong, it fixes it? If you think about algorithms, that's hard. Harder. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different ways you can twist. What I'm trying to say is this combinatorics here. If you take a search query and you start to include all possible respellings of it, and the exciting thing about Google is it includes respellings into non-English words. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you only have to check English misspellings, that's easy because there aren't that many misspellings to correct. But sometimes you type it in the right spelling and it knows you meant that brand name. Like, like Google, for example. Google is the misspelling of the number. Googol. I'm just explaining that piece. That piece actually, I believe the guy who was behind spell check was actually one of the International Math Olympiad people from the United States. And that's giving an idea that people from US team, they ended up joining some of these big software companies from early stage, relatively early stage, because those are the stages that they needed someone like that to go and think. There are also people who went into finance. In the 80s and 90s, there were quite a few people from US Math Olympiads who chose to go into the financial world because, well, you can get a pretty good job. But the kind of finance that they did, they were using their math to write systems to be able to decide when to buy and sell stocks and bonds and whatever. And they made tons of money because then they were like, one of them is I think multiple are founders and own companies which manage the investments. If you want to know why those people make so much money, it's because what they do is they just turn money into more money with exponential growth. It's pretty effective. Like, those are the people who own the companies and cause the exponential growth to happen, and they keep all of it. When you work for a bank, you do not get to benefit from the exponential growth because the bank sees you as an employee, they give you this money, you are happy, and you go home. And the bank gets the exponential growth and is really happy. Does that make sense? So basically, these people who got involved in the financial world, they said, well, how about I run the bank? But it's hard to run a bank because a bank is big. So what they did is they instead said, well, what if I find a way to cause exponential growth to happen? Then you start with some amount of money and you run the exponential growth on it. Okay, that's what some people did. That was like some earlier decades. Then there was a wave of people doing more software. Like, there was, when I say software, it's like maybe at some point it became about a third between people going into academia, people going into software, people going into finance. Then there was a phase where there was even more software, because at a point in the mid-2000, the O's, the 2005 to 2010-ish time, more people went into the software side. And then lately, more and more people are going into the finance side. In fact, huge numbers of people are going into the finance side. I think this is related to the fact that now the financial companies sponsor the math competitions. So then people all see the logos. I don't know if you know what I mean. There's like all these logos of the banks, not banks, they're financial companies. For example, there's a company called Jane Street Capital. I'm not sure if you've heard of them before. But they sponsor lots and lots of math competitions, and lots of people go work there. It's quite funny because they also give out t-shirts. So whenever you go around the US and hang out in the math contest groups, since they have sponsored all of these, you just see the t-shirts that everyone's wearing are the t-shirts with the logos of the financial companies. At one point, I did ask one student, because I was just curious. I asked the student, they had a shirt called Citadel Securities. Citadel Securities, that's a brand, Citadel Securities. And I asked the person, hey, do you know what they actually do? Because I was just curious, if this free shirt. And the person said, oh, don't they do like security or something? I said, not exactly. They're not like guarding doors. Securities is like the financial notion of like a stock or a bond. Anyway, it's quite fun. All these companies are sponsoring these competitions, and now that's causing a lot of them to want to work with them after they discover it's not actually a security company, right? But In any case, that's sort of where the flow is going. I did see in that group, like there was this stint where there was a bunch of people going into this academic world, which is what I just showed some people doing there. But generally speaking, it's like about a third, a third, a third. We have almost zero going on to become medical doctors or lawyers. Almost zero. It's almost zero. Everyone goes for these other like technology things. And actually, I want to emphasize something here. These are pretty good decisions. Because in these industries that they work in, when you put in an hour of work, that hour of work usually results in discovering a better way to do something. That's what they work on. They work on using their hours to make better ways of doing something, instead of using their hours of work to do an hour of product, if that makes sense. When you put in an hour of work and do an hour of product, you will earn the money corresponding to the value generated by that hour of product. If you put in an hour of work and cause everything to be 1% more efficient, that is multiplicative. It means the entire flow of all production made by that thing is now worth an extra 1%. It's a thing to think about. And that's like why, even if you look at the previous talks I gave, the things I like to work on are how do you use your time to generate infrastructures, to create systems. Because then as those things scale up, they actually generate enormous amounts of value. Okay, but again, those people who choose to become doctors and lawyers, thank you for what you do. We need them too. It's just that somehow in the US, people don't do that. In one part, because in the US, a lot of these math people find that being a doctor involves memorizing too much stuff, and they just don't like it. That's just like the way it is. And the lawyer is similar. Sorry? No? Okay. It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Sorry? Oh no, they don't like memorizing. No. The math people don't like memorizing because the math people like to reduce everything to the logic, and then everything is just, it's because of this, it's because of that, and it's not like here is how there's some muscle in here. I forgot which one it is, but yeah, it's too arbitrary. Yeah. Okay, that was a question from online. How about a question from here? There was somebody who was in the back who wanted to ask. Come please, the guy in the blue shirt. Yes.
I will just like to ask about your experiences in terms of the others, meaning like doing a selection in IMO, you will get just the top six. How about the 7 to 12? I don't think it's like at that point in time the 1 to 6 are better than the 7 to something. But how do they approach, like where are they now? How are they doing, as well as like do they like still keep in connection with the team itself, so on, or with you guys?
Oh yeah. So I can say this. I don't like selection. It makes me sad. Because when there's selection, the number 7 is so sad. 7th best in the country is pretty good, isn't it? Right? So I find it very, very depressing. And so I generally don't work on that. There are other people in the US who take the responsibility of selection. And now I have a very good excuse because my daughter is 16 and she plays in the contest. So I said, there's conflict of interest. Someone else take care of writing all the tests and doing the selection. I just teach people, okay? So yeah. So this is our split. I manage the teaching and the encouraging and all of that stuff, which is the fun part that I enjoy. And there are other people who just really like writing test problems and they like grading test problems. And I say, good, that's your job. You take care of that. And now we split. So then to let you know the answer, my answer to that question is actually usually every year, okay? The selection is made and I call the 6 people and I say, congratulations, you're on the team. And then usually within about a week, because I call the people months before the contest, about a week later, if you asked me who are the people on the US team, I will say, I don't remember. Because it didn't matter to me that was it. It's just that there's this whole bunch of people who I know are good. I know that 6 of them are the ones that we'll be taking to Japan this summer. We haven't picked yet, but we know who we'll be taking. But that has not changed my view of whether or not they have potential or not. Right? So the way I've always looked at people is that way. Consequently, people stay in touch with us. In fact, at our National Math Olympiad training camp, we have people who help and grade papers and teach classes who were not on the team. That's fine. I mean, I know so many people in this world who never even did the Olympiads, but somehow later on you find out, wow, look at that, they're really good. So I think it's healthy to not think of this as like the person is special because at this moment in their life they got in the top 6. Maybe that's colored by the fact that I know that when I got in, it was like luck, right? This, I'm not just saying this. I know this is true. So it's why is that the important thing? The important thing is actually what you do, because maybe I also know if you get in, then that's not guaranteed that you're going to do anything later anyway, right? You have to actually make sure that you look at a person as what they're all doing, not based on a snapshot when they were 17 years old. They happened to do well on one test. Yeah. So that's how I look at this. So actually, when I say where the people are going, I'm not even differentiating between top 6 and not. The only reason I did this thing with the top 6 is because that was very easy to look up, because that was around the exact same 6 where people were celebrating that those 6 won the contest, and I wanted to make the point that those 6 won the contest, but the bigger thing they did is the other thing. And by the way, when we talk about people who just missed, like who were just below the top 6, the most financially successful recent US Math Olympiad contest person is not one of the top 6, but he was close. He currently runs a company. The company is worth $8 billion. He started a company called Scale.ai. His name is Alexander Wang, but I think he did these contests probably in the 2012, 2013 range. He runs a company now worth $8 billion. US dollars, right? And yeah, he's doing well. What can you say? He's doing well. He basically realized that there was going to be a huge wave of work in AI, and he realized that one of the main values in AI will be based on training the data sets. So it's called Scale.ai. They actually work on methods to systematize training gigantic AI models. Right place at the right time, but also pretty smart. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. And this is I don't differentiate and say you're special just because you were in the top 6. Yeah. Question from online. Do we have a question from online since we usually go back and forth? Yeah, thank you.
How will you encourage less experienced math teachers to be engaged in math Olympiads?
I think it's interesting to take this as a sport. Right? I think it's useful for everyone, hopefully, to enjoy challenging themselves. And even if you start from somewhere and you're not in there yet, well, you can always get in. I want to recognize that people are also busy. So sometimes the reason people don't do it is because they have enough things that they have to manage already. But if you see students who could do this sort of a thing, if you can also put yourself in and try, you will also grow significantly. I think it's hard to do much more than that kind of a statement, because it's ultimately up to the person what they want to do. Yeah, but this will make you a more strong person in general. Other questions? Anyone's from the inside? Oh yeah. Let's go here since you're right there, and then we'll go there next. Yep.
This is a personal question. Hi, sir. I'm Richel Flores. In solving Olympiad level problems for fun, where do I draw a line between admitting that I don't know the theoretical underpinnings needed for a problem and just lacking the mental tenacity to actually solve the problem?
I think, for me, I would usually think about a question for approximately 1 to 2 times the expected time to spend on that problem. Okay, what do I mean? There are problems on tests. There might be a test, and it might have 3 questions and 4.5 hours. That sounds like the average amount of time you should spend per question is 1.5 hours, except that the 3 questions have very different difficulty. And it might be that par, meaning if you really could solve all 3, would be first question, half an hour, second question, 1 hour, maybe 1.5 hours, and last question, 2.5 to 3 hours. Okay, those are the expected times per question. Don't spend spend that amount of time or twice that amount of time. And then finally, if you really can't do anything, look at the solution, but only look at halfway in the solution. Read the sentences at exactly halfway in the solution. Don't read the beginning, don't read the end, read the halfway. That's your hint. Then you close it and try it again. And if that doesn't work, you open it, and then you look at what's at 1/4 of the way. Close it, try again. If that doesn't work, look at 1/8. I'm doing binary search. You keep slicing it. At some point, you can piece it all together. And then that way you'll never be like saying you weren't clever enough to do it. It will only be because, oh yes, I was missing that piece. What is this thing? And you go and learn a concept. Yeah. Question from online? Is there a question from online? Well, while we're waiting for that, there was another question from offline. Why don't you come over? Because you were ready. Yes. And then we'll do an online one after this. Yep.
Okay, so hello, Professor. So this is also a bit of a personal question on my end as well. So as you observed earlier, there were a lot more people who raised their hands when you asked who prepares for math contests instead of just math Olympiads. And I do think from personal experience and experiences from some of my other friends who also go to math contests and Olympiads, a lot of the contests we join when we're younger aren't Olympiads in the sense that they don't really require full proofs or proofs that aren't as rigorous as the ones required for Olympiads. So I feel that when I was first introduced to Olympiads, I really began struggling with knowing how to fully write proofs. And I feel that a lot of my other peers also struggled to get into Olympiads, even though we all had a lot of background with other math contests. And I don't know if it's because they also struggled to write proofs, but so I guess I have two questions. The first would be, to someone who's only getting into math Olympiads, what advice would you give them when it comes to learning how to write proofs? And second, surely you've met students who want to devote time to studying math like this, knowing how to write proofs, but maybe they already have a lot of requirements for school. So what advice would you give to students who are having a difficult time juggling preparing for math contests with a heavy workload in school?
Yeah, great. So the first one is like how to learn how to write proofs. This is hard. This is hard. You need to find somebody who can help read the proofs and give you feedback. And this is interesting. So I don't know what your ecosystem here is in Philippines. In the United States, we have a free math competition called the USA Math Talent Search, where you get problems and you have 1 month to think about them and write them up and send them back, and someone will grade them and tell you how your proof quality was. This is a useful way of getting feedback if you can't get feedback from someone right around you. I wonder if international people can do it too. It's called the USA Math Talent Search, and the beautiful thing is it's free. The reason it's free is because the people who grade it are the United States National Security Agency. So this way they can know who all the smart people are, right? These are the ones who spy on people. These are the spy. This is the spy agency. So they like to know like who's out there, and they'll grade it for you. Great. Okay, but if you can participate, great. I'd say go for it. I don't know if you guys have something. Do you have something that people? This takes labor. Huh? The question was, suppose there is somebody who wants to try to write proofs and submit them for someone to read them and get feedback every month. Do you have like a, no, because it takes people to grade. No, this takes people to grade. So again, as I said, this only exists in the US because the US spy agency is funding it. So, okay. Well, yes, Ernie. Yes, of course you may say something. Ernie is a pro. He knows what's going on. Yeah. Ernie was the leader.
No, I would just like to say that in the university, we actually teach a course, Foundations of Mathematical, or what do we call that subject? But teaching students how to prove. And this is surprising because in the Philippine setting, we are used to thinking that contests are about speed, but not about organizing your thoughts and presenting a valid mathematical proof. So even to our math majors, after teaching them calculus, we teach them how to prove. And that's a 4-unit course, 4 times a week, 1 hour per session. I don't know about the math curriculum here at the Ateneo, but I think all other math curriculums, BS math curriculums have that subject. So we do teach them how to prove, but unfortunately, already in the college level.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. It's the same. So the US is the same. Basically, that's why I said the difficulty is in the labor. If you're trying to do it at the high school level, we in our university, it's one of the most difficult courses for the undergraduates, and it takes so much effort to help teach them how to write proofs. Nevertheless, I wonder if you can scale that in any way by if you go to a school, if you have some friends who are also into this, if you can scale it peer to peer, meaning somebody else who has some experience helping give you feedback, that can be the most useful thing. Hopefully someday ChatGPT-3 will be able to tell you whether or not your proof is good. But right now, unfortunately, I don't think it knows what a proof is, because right now it thinks that 1/4 is bigger than 1/3. So that's not going to help too much, right? But I think that's an important question. Find people. It's a human thing, okay? The second question was, suppose you're busy with school. How do you get motivated to do math competitions as well? That's why I just gave this tidbit of if you're trying to get into universities that are outside of the Philippines, and you want to get funding for it, it's probably going to be very useful to have some results on these math competitions that they run, or results on and I actually recommend to everyone to enter all of these international ones. There's also an Australian math competition. You can answer that too. The reason you enter all of them is because you just report whichever was the best. You know what I mean? Like, suppose you did not do well on the American one, but you did well on the Australian one. Bam! Okay, look, Australian this. It's just you need to have some way of showing people outside the country that you are good to invest resources in. And that's why I would tell anyone, if they're in a school and they want to maybe dream of going outside, doing these contests is actually a really useful way to get that. Yeah, great. Is there an online question now?
Now, from the online people, how do you know that you are ready to compete in math Olympiads and or contests?
And or what?
Olympiads or contests?
Oh, contest. You're ready as soon as you think you can solve something. I mean, something, not zero. But you don't have to solve much. And it always starts from the contest questions which have number answers or multiple. Do you have multiple choice or number answers? Both. Okay. In the US, it starts with multiple choice because that's the only way we can grade all of them. We put it into a machine. Okay? But the point is, you start when you start the first level when you can do something. Actually, the multiple choice one in the US is called, there's one called the AMC 8 even. It's for 8th grade and below. My daughter did that. Youngest daughter, when she was in 2nd grade. It didn't matter to us like how many points you scored. Just as long as you think you can solve some questions, it's good. In fact, we don't know how she scored. Because after the exam, she came home and she said to her siblings, she said something like, where do you put your name on the contest? She's a 2nd grader, okay? And she said she thought maybe the teacher will just like know which one is hers. By the way, this is multiple choice. The multiple choice exam sheet has no handwriting anywhere on it. It just has 1, 2, 3 up to 25, A, B, C, D, E. So we were wondering about this. So we went and looked at a PDF to see what does the sheet look like. And what we saw was that there's this sheet, big sheet, questions 1, 2, 3 up to 25, like this part, big space here, lots of bubbles. A, B, C, D up to Z, A, B, C, D up to Z, A, B, C, D up to Z, A, D, yeah, and 2 sections of it. Called first name and last name, right? And so we asked her, did you do anything on the other part of the sheet? And she said, oh, I didn't know it looked like there was a whole bunch of extra blank stuff. So basically, yeah, it doesn't matter how you do, right? It's just go and get a challenge. Go and get a challenge. And that's the kind of healthy attitude to go with. Go and get a challenge. Get one, okay. Actually, you see, maybe we don't care too much about going in and having to win, because I also teach the Putnam Math Competition class at Carnegie Mellon University. The Putnam Math Competition is for North America university students. 12 questions, 6 hours. Each question is worth 10 points. 10 points per question, 12 questions, maximum score, 120. Every year, 5,000 people take the test. The median score is usually 1 point out of 120 points. Okay, 1 point. That's like barely any partial credit. That means that about half the students got nothing. Okay? But in my university, we have more than 200 people take this test every year. It's okay. You just go try. They try. And the good news is the worst thing that will ever happen is you're 1 point below the median. And that's okay. Yeah, and then sometimes they actually solve the question, 10x median. 10 points, right? And they're so happy. They're like, I got 1. By the way, these questions are hard. They are hard. But I'm just explaining, it's just, when is the right time to go to these? Whenever you're mentally ready to go and say, I might get a 0, but we're going to try anyway. And if you saw my earlier talk, the one at the very beginning in the morning, that's how you go and say, let's go try the hard things, darn it. And let's just see what happens. Because at the worst, you won't get it, but you wouldn't get it anyway. Yeah, okay. A question from here. Anyone has a question from here? Yes, please, please, please.
In those years that you coached the IMO team, what is the ratio of female students making it to the team versus the male students?
Unfortunately, I know the answer to that question. It's 0. Unfortunately. I've thought about this a lot. So unfortunately, it's 0. But by the way, the number of female students who were close compared to the male students who were close now is not 0. It's still low. It's still low. It's 0. But there are some things inside here. So first of all, I think that people can be just as good whether they're male or female. That is true. The question then becomes, who makes the choice in their life that they want to invest a huge amount of time into this one endeavor? That's a personal choice. This is not a measurement of are girls better than boys or not. Because in order to do well, anyone who has done these things know that you're making a very clear choice to invest thousands of hours of your life into this kind of mathematics. And you might have other things that you want to do. So I would say it's not a reflection of whether girls or boys can do math. It's a reflection of whether girls or boys have chosen to run into this thing. And so that's unfortunately the way it is. I should also say, I should also say, we work very hard then to try to make sure that on the broader scale than just who makes it on the 6 people, that we actually have girls and boys. And that does happen. So first of all, you can also see, I don't like to just focus on those 6 people as being the best. Because I've also said before, what happens afterwards is not universal that everyone who ends up there ends up like getting the best. In fact, there are people who get lots of other interesting things who never went into that 6th group. So, for example, at our National Math Olympiad training camp, that one has 60 students, and about 10% of them are girls. No, more than 10. 16%, something like that. We have about 16% who are girls, right? So we have something like that. And that's better. But actually, these days, what I really work on, okay, I should say it this way. Even that group, that's selected by an exam. And whenever there is an exam, whenever there's a mechanism for selecting things, there will be certain people who say, I'm going to put a lot of energy to make sure that I get well on that measurement point. By the way, there's a reason why in the US, there are people trying to get well on that measurement point. It's because US universities are highly competitive, and people think that if they manage to get into that point, it will significantly increase their chance of getting into a university. So some people will say, that's my strategy for university admission. I will just put my eggs on that basket, and then they run hard on that side. There are other people who say, all eggs in one basket is kind of a risky strategy. And they decide they want to do a bunch of other things. So this is why I'm saying it's a personal choice, right? And then so some people do other things. What I'm particularly happy with is that I've told you, so you've also seen, those of you who were in the other 2 parts of my talk, you saw that I also run a talent development program for high school students. To be perfectly frank, that group is the one I'm the most excited about working with, because I also work with a group of high school students, which is based on inbound applications, where now these are people who are really good at math, also genuinely nice, also very interested in making sure they have communication skills. Why did I put that as my combo? It's because I think that combo is going to actually be very successful in life. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly. Actually, I should say not surprisingly, but very pleasantly, the pleasant fact is that that program is basically 50-50. And the interesting thing is it's 50-50 without needing to make any special adjustments in the criteria for selection. Strangely enough, if the criteria are you need to be genuinely nice, really, really good at math, and also genuinely committed to picking up these kinds of interpersonal skills, it goes 50-50. And in my opinion, that's actually what's useful for life success. So, when I look at this thing, I just say, different people have decided to invest their time in different ways. I mean, for example, in the US, there's even a competition where the competition is that you have 10 minutes, and the winner is the one who eats the most hot dogs. It's male, female, both welcome to enter. It's currently male-dominated. So different people choose to do different things in their life, and I just want to emphasize, it would be a problem if the success was gatekept by that. But that's not the main through way to success. Yeah. Okay. But that's a deep question, and I think a lot about that. And I'm very, very happy. I was very, very happy when the program I actually run, which is not just based on one test, I was really happy when that one just is shaking out 50-50. So. Would my daughter be interested? My daughter is actually, she was on the US Women's Math Olympiad team last year, so she's one of the top 4, last year she was one of the top 4 high school girls in the US, so she's actually quite good. Nevertheless, getting all the way into the top 6 of the United States, that's pretty crazy. Will she do it? Never know. Actually, I was surprised when she got into the top 4 in the girls' math contest, because I never looked at her scores. If you can tell by now, we're not a look at scores things. In my family, by the way, I never taught her anything. I was very careful. I only teach other people's kids. Okay? But the reason I did that is because I wanted that if she or any of my kids ever did well in math contests, they wouldn't have everyone saying, "Who's your coach?" You know what I mean? It's not fair, right? So I didn't teach her. The thing is, my wife taught her. But that's fair, because my wife never did math contests before. There was a question about if you didn't have the how to get in math contests if you didn't as a teacher. My wife was the one staying at home teaching our daughter, and she had never done any math contests before. And what she did is she taught herself the math contest stuff while teaching our daughter. That's fair, because that means what my daughter got is the experience of learning with someone else who was learning as they were going. That's a fair game. As opposed to me saying, here are all the secrets, right? So anyway, so my daughter is in that. Will she make the official team? Well, that's just that's up to luck too as we go. She is, on the other hand, in the high school program that I run. So this is just this is how I look at the world. Okay, other questions? Is there an online question prepared? Yes. And then we'll go to the on-site questions. Yeah.
This is a bit of a lengthy one. From
A
your
bit of a what?
lengthy.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
From your vast experience in various math competitions, do you believe that there is a need to revolutionize our present curriculum if our goal is to reach the pinnacle in these undertakings? We also wish to inquire on the correlation between success in Olympiad contests and governmental bureaucracy. We believe that extra milestones can only be achieved by extraordinary measures. Hence, we believe that the system must be as effective as the student. We believe that these 2 points are major factors impeding our quest in achieving our goals, not just in mathematics, but also in other prestigious academic Olympiads, such as informatics and the sciences. So, the major question here is, do you believe that there is a need to revolutionize our present curriculum if our goal is to reach the pinnacle in these undertakings, which is math competitions?
Okay, so whenever you want to go and change systems that are controlled by government bureaucrats, this becomes quite complicated. If you're trying to change an entire system, right? So I'll say it's a nice idea to try to change things, but I think we always should try to think, what can we do ourselves too, right? And I think that starts from everywhere. Teachers can do things, students can do things, asking for big change sometimes makes the change happen, but maybe the change is not what you wanted, because maybe somebody saw, oh, there will be big change. Oh, someone's going to make a lot of money selling the new curriculum. Then which curriculum gets picked? This is complicated. Like this is just why, to me, I think it is true that we need to revolutionize the kind of ways that we're making people able to learn. And I think it's best if you can find a way that doesn't require the okay of somebody as a prerequisite, or else you might be waiting a long time. It's good to still ask, right? It's good to ask. But at the same time, it's good to keep thinking, what can you do? That's why I think it's great that you got things going on, right? I mean, you don't need to wait for the entire curriculum of the entire Philippines to change. There's action that can be taken right now. And so it's good that you have even like these kinds of events where you're bringing together all these people who are interested in this. Who knows? Maybe you can cause some kind of change to happen too. For me, I like to get involved with this by using internet stuff. And so who knows? Maybe some of you will also come up with some ways to use internet stuff to go and cause another alternative side structure to emerge by which all of this can happen. Yeah. Actually, I want to answer one more. Oh, go on. Yeah, question or comment. Yeah, go ahead. No.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to react to that as well because, well, to revise the curriculum based on Olympiads, we have to remember that the people who compete on Olympiads are a very small section of the population. Now, if you want to revise it based on something else, maybe global competitiveness or something like that, maybe that would be more doable or that would be more practical. I know that that was revised pretty recently, and Dr. Vistro, you would be more knowledgeable about that. I know because I came to her last talk about 8 years ago about that, about the revision of the national curriculum. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you. And it's great to be around people who actually have expertise on that question. So that's good. That's good. I did want to make one more comment about the girls thing, by the way, because that's an important point. I do want to say, it's not actually that I think it's great, by the way, to see if there's underperformance, relative underperformance. So I actually work quite extensively on also how to help build up success among girls as far as possible. But I should say, if I go even deeper into that, now you can see why some of the architecture that I build is the way it is. Why in the world did I look at what is the ratio of gender in the program that I'm running? It's because the program I'm running is delivering the gifted and talented education, and it's delivering it through live video teaching. Those are examples. Did you notice that there was one boy and one girl who were co-leading that class? That was on purpose. I actually do a lot of work around what causes this pipeline, what causes people to do what they want to do. Remember I said this thing about someone wants to eat hot dogs or someone wants to do math Olympiads. Well, if you want to change the outcomes, you need to change the who wants to do what, who enjoys doing what. There's a reason why what we're doing is we're intervening at grade 6, grade 7, and we're showing people examples of diverse batches of people who are doing really well, enjoying themselves, hopefully actually inspiring more people to want to follow, because now they can see they can go into something which is not completely dominated. I want to just say, sometimes people feel uncomfortable going into a situation where you're the only person of your kind. That's how I felt when I walked into a room of cheerleaders. There's a YouTube video of me hanging out with a room of cheerleaders. That's because I was trying to get more Americans interested in math. And so there's actually a YouTube video about this, me hanging out with a room of cheerleaders. That was, actually it turned out okay. But like the concept of walking in and being the only person there, it's a certain thing. I mean, sometimes when I go into these classrooms where I go to teach in 6th and 7th grade to go and see how I can help, well, in one of them, when I walked in, I was the only Asian person there. Actually, I was the only non-African American person in the entire lunchroom, right? So it's just like you walk in and you're the one who's different. If you don't go and get ready and you're ready to deal with it, right? Then it can be you might decide not to stick on. Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, the thought here is that it's very, very important, and then I think back to, like, how you actually do something about it, and I like to think of how you can do something at scale, and one of the things I saw was how to help provide inspiration at scale. Oh, well, maybe we can do that if our program has 50-50 on the delivery, and then now intervene at grade 6 and 7, you might be able to scalably actually change the shape of that. Although, will we see at the actual IMO, will that change? I don't know. But I'm not sure that that's the most important metric. The most important metric is, in general, are lots and lots of people going through who are both boys and girls. Yeah, okay. As you can see, I actually really care about that topic. That's why I went back to it again. Meanwhile, that was an online question. Is there another in-person question? And I also want to do this. I know we started late, but maybe it's good if we stop at 5 anyway, because some people might have thought that they have transportation or other things they have to do. I will still be up here, just as usual, so we can still interact, right? Let's take the last question for the day. Anyone want to ask a last question for the day? Oh yes, let's go. You got it. You got it. Go for it.
Hello. Okay. I guess this will be a bit personal, but well, you've mentioned earlier that yeah, sometimes one of the indicators for universities or maybe other opportunities in the future is looking at experience on things like contests and Olympiads. So actually, on my experience, sometimes some people would tend to be quite desperate in getting into these kinds of competition so that they would get the rank or get the attention. Because of course, if you're part of some big thing, then that would allow you to have more opportunities eventually. So in those cases, maybe on two perspectives, as a fellow student or someone training for things like that, and as a trainer or coach, how would you approach cases of academic dishonesty?
Yeah. So the way I think about academic dishonesty is I think that's sad, right? I think that's sad. I think it's important that people understand that you want to get ahead in this world fair and square, right? And so I went to a university where we had an honor code, and the honor code, whenever it dealt with academic dishonesty, had a certain approach which I thought made sense. And I think this is how I like to run things, which is, if there's dishonesty, there are two things you do as the punishment. Well, first of all, you figure out what happened, okay? They need to figure out what happened. But then there are two things. The punishment is broken into two categories. The university I went to was called Caltech, so we are very scientific with how we think about this. The first category is to eliminate the unfair advantage that gave the person. We call it unfair advantage. If a person got unfair advantage, there are two things we need to do. One is eliminate the unfair advantage. This involves a very precise analysis of, like, what did they do? Did they get like 5 more points? Or we have to estimate, of course. Or like, did they cause this other person to decrease, or whatever they did? Or did they get the whole answer sheet? Well, you first eliminate the cause of eliminate the effect. That might involve subtracting some points from the score. It might not involve making the score 0, by the way. It's like, what exactly was the amount of the unfair advantage? By the way, if we can't tell for sure, we might overestimate it, because we're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. If we actually figured out something bad happened, we'll do something to make sure that you had no advantage. That's one. But then the second piece is the one to protect the community. That one is to try to understand: are you going to do this again? Will you do this again? And if you do, how much do we need to take action to make sure it doesn't cause more problems? Interestingly enough, when we were running the honor code, usually the first offense, there is not the second, like, additional big punishment. The first offense was usually, okay, what advantage did you get? Let's get rid of it, and let's have a serious conversation on what it means to be a person. Okay? And then based on that conversation, kind of feel out, do we think this person actually gets it, or are they still a threat? If they actually get it, okay, no additional punishment. If they're actually a threat, we might need to remove your privileges to participate next year, and so on. This is the delicate thing. It's not that we were able to do something very simple and just say, here's a hard rule. We actually cared a lot about the community we had. By the way, I'm saying all of this as a person who was one of the judges. I was one of the honor code judges at Caltech. There are about 12 of them every year. They're all students, in fact. So that's this thing of, first, make sure there's no advantage in this case. Second, make sure that there is the community is protected from further violations, reducing the chance of further violations to like hopefully zero. But now if you get convicted a second time, that's a different story. Because it's like, well, you didn't get it the first time, right? That can go all the way to expulsion. Because then it's like, how do you protect the community from this repeat offender? And this is tricky. This is about justice system, and I think I'm not an expert in this area, but it might be related to restorative justice or something. It's like how to make sure that we don't just say, you're a criminal now, go away. There could be value in the person, right? And also what we understand is, it's not good, but sometimes it's a kid. Like, maybe they didn't know yet, right? And so this is why it's different. This is why, actually, even in American criminal law, people who are under 18, there's a different way of thinking about things than people who are over 18. At the university, they were already over 18, but still, it was the same concept, because maybe the university had a lot of kids who were really good at math, and the rest of the maturity might still be working on it. And so that's why we always try to work in a way to make it so that we can optimize for the student and protect the community. Does that sort of make sense? Yeah, that's my style. Maybe I'm too much of a softie, but that's my style. That's how I approach things. With that, I think we're at 5:03, so nice talking to you, nice getting to know you all. Take care, bye-bye.
All right, well, we're going to accept a few more questions because it's okay with him. Yeah.
Okay, yes, so we'll take a few more that came in online just because we want to make sure they got a chance. Okay, let's go some more. And so they're going to come in online. There we go.
From online people, how to get over the anxiety of competing in math Olympiads or get over the fear of failing in math Olympiads?
It happens anyway. I mean, the failing happens anyway. It's just like, okay, here's the deal. It's just knowing that that's not the end of the world. That's not the only shot you've got for glory in life. I guess that's when you start to relax. When you say, life consists of doing hard things. You do them over and over and over again. Eventually one of them works. Does that help? Good. More online questions.
Second online question. What's the significance of math Olympiads, especially to the general public?
What's the, sorry?
Significance of math Olympiads, specifically to the general public.
It's always good to have things that cause people to stretch their abilities, because then you discover what people can do, and it inspires more people to stretch their abilities. Math Olympiads are very useful because it's good to have people who can do like math and technical things. So that's an inspiration to people that drags up the level all around. Anything else from the online?
For people who are already, I'm quoting, too old to compete, is it still worthwhile to learn competition math and to do competition level problems?
That's what my wife did. Actually, then she taught my oldest daughter. She taught all our kids. She did okay. She did a good job, right? And then now what does she do? She actually works with me. So actually these days, my wife and I work together. This whole program that we run, actually she's also one of the people who helps to coach and train all of these high school students who work with us, because she actually knows pretty well now how to build up talent, build up skill. So the point is, you're never too old. It can be useful. Yeah. Any other online? Or is that it? Okay, then we're good. Yay.
So you talked about stretching abilities, so we stretch your time and your abilities. Thank you very much.